Welcome back to the channel, and level 3 was said to be hardest. This one is 10 times harder, and you can probably see why. First things first, we need to make our tool, and as you can see here, I got the toolbox open. I got the model from the toolbox, and the first thing you want to do is when you're using the toolbox is check what occurs when you play test it. So you want to know what's wrong with your tool, what's going on with it. So I turn it on can collide on here and see how the rest of the tool parts interact with each other. And the sheath and the sword, okay, this tells me a lot of things. Number one, all the parts are not welded together, they're not attached to each other. And number two, the blade and the sheath are separated, which is good. So first things first, I'm gonna weld all the blade parts together and then weld all the sheath parts together. Okay, now that I've made sure that all the parts that I want to be welded together are now welded, now we can begin with rigging this tool. So first, to make to make it grip the sheath, we have to make our handle on the sheath. And our character will be gripping the sheath from right here. And the second part I want to do is, in the showcase, I showed that you can move the blade and the sheath separately inside of an animation. And how do you do that? Well, I used this item called, or this object called a weld. And a weld is a special weld. This thing, I'm gonna call it bind. This thing has special properties that allow me to do a lot of things. So when I attach them two together, it put the sword on top of the sheath. And this is because there's these two properties here that allows you to alter the offset of the bindings or the weld. And using those properties, I moved the blade back into its sheath seemingly perfectly. Now I named this our handle and put it inside of our part or model, and we have our to make our actual tool. So first I'm gonna name this the weapon, make our handle completely transparent, and make our tool. Forgot to put this in there, but make sure you turn off RequiresHandle. This tool technically does not have a handle, so you need to turn this off for the script to work. Now, I'm going to show you how you can make your dummy or your character hold the tool without actually equipping the tool itself. So first, I forgot to weld the handle. And now, if I move this onto my rig, create a weld here, set the weld to the handle, and then set the part 1 to my left arm. It will append to my left arm, and now all I have to do is mess with the settings to get the result I want. There we go. So now we have to make our script so it automatically sets our weld to our arm. So copy and paste it and put it back into your server starter pack. And remember to, oh, it self-destructed the weld. Okay, that makes it convenient. So make sure to put back the weld, put back the settings that you got for the ding when you were testing it. Set the weld for the handle, but not part 1, because we're going to be using our script to set it for us, because it doesn't know how to set it. Oops, I meant to put the script into parenting Yamato. Okay. And we have it pulling out. To explain what I just did, so getting the player, I call this player is because when you start up a game starter pack, it duplicates any tools inside of here and puts it inside the player's starter or backpack. So it gets the script, then it gets the parent, which is Yamato, then it gets the parent of Yamato, which is the backpack, and it gets the parent of the backpack, which is the player object. And character, player.character gets the character tool, get the tool local, get the weapon model, and then set the weapon model to workspace. I did this because when you're de-equipping a weapon, and it goes back into your backpack, the entire model becomes invisible, but we don't want that. We want the Yamato to be on either side at all times. So we set it to workspace, but the tool is still in our backpack and player character, so we can still de-equip and unequip it without having the actual player or the model disappearing, and then I set the part 1 and gripped it here. And the next part we have to do is obviously make our ability activator. And it's a good idea you organize all your locals in using tab and spaces. It just makes it easier to see. Now that we've got our base script, all we gotta do is add in our effect. And I'm gonna separate this into parts. So first I'm gonna focus on the wind up, make the effects for the wind up, then move on to the actual attack, and then the end. I have my animation up here, and I'm not going to teach you how to make an animation because humanoid animations are really easy to make. This took like 10 minutes to do. Sure, I have some experience, but it's not that hard. So first things first, the first method of trying to sync up your animation with your script is you have to hover your mouse over this blue line. I'll tell you this amount of seconds it takes to reach that point. And I wrote a comment for each major point I want to like play an effect when it occurs. So at 0.33 seconds, that means I have put my sword on the hilt, and at 0.67 seconds after the first second, which is right here, it resets every 1 second. Oh, never. 0.67 seconds after the second right here, because every time every second it just resets the second thing. It's weird, I know. So after 2.67 seconds, the wind up ends, and I'm about to unleash my attack. And now that I have that written down, I just use this for reference later when I want to make my effects. So right here, I'm going to teach you how to use animation events. And to get started, first you get your animation editor out. Go to a point where you want like a certain event to be played at. So I want an event to be played at the very end of the wind up. I called this event flash. By that event, right click the blue thing, add animation event, and then put in a name. I suggest ABCD, but you can name whatever you want. ABCD is easier to remember, but I already have the event. So what this line does is, I have my animation track, I play the animation track, and this line here will delay the entire script until this event is fired. And this event is fired is when the animation track reaches this animation event called flash. So if I type in here, look at the output, it says done after a little while, because done occurs in 2.67 Alright, now it's on the special effects section. So for the startup, I use this entire model and I just moved it onto our character while they're charging up. And this is 7 objects, all with the same colored particle emitter, and it doesn't look like it, but I used the same fog decal for each of them. And to get started on this, first you want to make a cylinder. So I switch now, it's gonna be big, push it down a little again, and something face here. Should be this big, so okay, this big. And the easiest way to alter this is just type in the number, and whatever number you put in is going to be the diameter of your cylinder. And this, if you divide whatever number you put in here by 2, that's the radius of your attack. And now I'm going to make the spear, which is this, set this one. This is also the and the third is already parts. Alright, I got my spear. I got the position property and set it, copied and pasted, and put in the spear property to put it on here. And I'm gonna do the spear effect first. Smoke. So first, I didn't want the particles to move to the side, so I disabled all of the velocity it has and speed. And I want it to slowly rise up, so I increase the Y component of acceleration to 5, so it accelerates up. It starts slow and then gets faster. And to make it only appear on the edges, you go to emitter shape, set it to sphere because the shape is the sphere, and then in shape in out, set it to outward. And for the shape style, this is the most important one. This is surface versus volume. If you know what they are, you know what they are, but if you don't, volume is the 3D shape and the surface is the outline shape, or the outline of the shape, so it only spawns on the outer edges. To make the particles close, there's this thing called light emission. See, this is no light emission, this is with light emission. And then I set the color, made the size huge. And the transparency dampens the brightness a little. I like to use that to dampen brightness. And Z off inset, I put it to -1 because I want all other objects to take priority over this, because if I don't have this at -1, I have it 0, it will cover the sphere more, which I don't want. I want to make it look like that the sphere takes priority in rendering, and that's how I made this thing. I've gotten this. I'm gonna copy the same particle emitter and put it inside of our cylinder, and I'm gonna build it real quick and explain what I did. Alright, here you can make this little string snowflake kind of design, and to modify it to have this little ripple effect, same thing, you go to the thing, go to the 3 dots, and instead of making a cone at the beginning, I make a cone at the end, or in the middle, my bad. And of course, if you want to make it sharper, right here. I think the squash is so low that it's not affecting it at all. I just got this too fast. Alright, here we go. And then I just squish it down and I get the ring effect. I think the lifetime's too long. So this is the thing about this stuff. It's all about testing and seeing what happens. Maybe velocity perpendicular is better. See, now I got an actual ring. I should have used that, but whatever. Actually, I am gonna use that for the little showcase. Put that in there. And you basically gotta mess around, hope you get the right things, and now I'm just gonna finish this up real quick. Alright, I'm just gonna use this for the remake, and to wrap it all up, just get it all, group it together, and you can add more if you want, but I'm just gonna use this for the sake of saving time. Alright, name the model, I'm gonna call it Effect. Put it inside of your Yamato. And here, I'm gonna get the local setup. Alright, I'm gonna set almost everything that I want to appear into workspace so it doesn't disappear when I geocode my tool, because that's how the tool works. But since I set the variable early on, and I'm probably not gonna change it, it will always reference the the object that I put into workspace. So even if I have multiple people using this tool, it should still work functionally. I did the multiplayer test, so it should work functionally. If you want to know how this actually works, just I don't know, research it or something. Actually, I should have put this into server storage. Yeah, server storage. And when I click on my tool, my effect will be back into workspace, and the position will be on our humanoid or root part. Oop. Forgot to turn off the can collide. There we go. And I think I'm gonna lower the effect because when I showcased it, it was a little too high. Actually, I probably should make this a plus sign and then put negative here. -2, so it's offsetted -2 on the y-axis downwards. And then when the move ends after this wait statement, I move the effect back into server storage. Test this out. And now we have the move. It's a little bright, but that's what the trial and error is. You just gotta mess with things until it looks better. Also, turn off the cam collide on the sword. It's kind of annoying. Alright, for the last bit of the wind up on the server side, I'm gonna make our character go invisible using this iterator script that I've made right here. And what this will does is giving a number, this parameter will change the transparency to whatever number I want. So I can make them untransparent after if I want to. And if you don't know what this is, a basic iterator script, gets every part under character or every descendant, and then tweens them to the transparency that I want in 0.35 seconds. And of course, I filter out the humanoid root part right here because I do not want the humanoid root part to be affected by the transparency thing. It's already invisible. It's going to stay invisible. So I'm going to show you how I made the slashes. So essentially what I did was I got a C-frame, created the C-frame within 0 to 70 on the x-axis and the full wheel on the y-axis. And then after it's rotated, I get the look vector right here and multiply by the length, which is 55 because the radius of the attack is 55. So I don't want any like points to be made in the middle of the orb. And I repeat this process until it makes a new point that is 50 studs away from the previous point. So at least I get at least a 50 stud radius slash effect. And here, this is where I actually changed this part is where I changed the part out here to visualize it. Add it to the table of points if the point is valid. Use the create slash function to create a slash. And yeah, let me show off what it does. And here is one thing. Euler angles YXZ. I didn't show this in my C-frame video, but basically you need to use this because what this does instead of C-frame angles is it rotates the y-axis first, then the x-axis, then the z-axis, and that's important because if the x-axis was rotated first like this, and let's say the y-axis is then rotated by like 170 degrees, it would start pointing into the ground and the look vector will get a position under the ground, and we don't want that. So that's how I made the slashes now. Time to implement this into the script. I'm gonna time-lapse this as always. I'm gonna do one more change. I'm gonna augment our transparency function so it works on all models and not just specifically used for the character, because I forgot that your sword does not go invisible. Now I gotta add in the Rubble effect, and since we already made this create table points function, it's actually quite simple to make this. You forgot to mention you want to put negative on the X and Z axis, or else it's all going to go into one quadrant, because negative refers the other way of the X axis. So if we don't have a negative for the Z or X axis, it would only point in one direction of that axis, and we want it to be randomized to go in any direction. That's why all the debris went in one direction. And that is our Rubble effect. And for our last bit, we just need to add in the animation, and I already got complete animations here, so I'm just gonna use this. I have this problem with another thing. I can't share these animations, so you're just gonna have to make your own. And finally, oh yeah, I'm putting transparency here because this flash animation is the little dash, and I want them to go invisible while dashing. So, and this is our final product of the server side part of Judgment Cut End. Oh, and I should probably turn off the can't collide on the sword. But yeah, sorry, it's not the end of this section. I forgot we need to make the bindable animation, like the sword on shading in. I'm gonna just remember that little spiel about grip. We're gonna be using that. Alright, time for the little shading part. I just need to see what the grip would look like if I were to move it out a little. So our current grip is this much. If I do this, it comes out that way. I'm gonna say it sheaves 2.5 and brings it back to 1.7. And I'm gonna use Tween to solve this. Just like that. It will close like that. And now for the script. Yeah, my Wi-Fi kind of went down, but here's the final product. All the server side stuff done. Polishing I'll do later, but all the effects are done for server side, and now let's move on to client side effects. So there are 4 things that I did in particular to make the camera effects. So first, camera setting or camera property, field of view. I tweened this property, field of view, and when you tween it, it makes the camera smaller or bigger, and I'm making it smaller in the showcase. Second thing is post-rendering effects, and this is what the post-render effects look like. If you don't know what they are, I'll explain it later. Next is another property in lighting, exposure. This makes a cool darkening effect, and I tweened that as well. And the last thing is creating the glass mirrors, or the glass, yeah, whatever they're called. This is the most complicated part. I made a bunch of them right in front of the camera, and as you can see right here, it makes a glass refraction. So I'm gonna start with all the easy ones, then move on to the glass one, which will probably take like. First, we make the remote event, so our server script can play stuff on the local script. I'm gonna do that really quickly. And I'm gonna think so let's go it's far needed, so I'm gonna really nail these guys. As soon as we lower, we're gonna hire the event for ourselves. And now we just have to put in timeline order all the effects we want to occur to us as this goes through. And since we don't have access to this method, we're gonna go back to the original method of memorizing the times of certain events happening, and I have the first 2 here. And now for the last or the final animation, I think I can roughly remember how much it was. It was at 3 seconds, flash, 4 seconds, sheathing sword, or I've reached the center, 5 seconds, sheath sword, and move. And I need to verify this. And depending on what animation you want, what the key marks you want to make. So now I've gotten these key marks, I'm gonna make And now to test it out, I misspelled exposure. Oh, never mind, I didn't misspell it. It's that the entire property name is not exposure compensation. And it did not work as I wanted to, so I just go back and fix it. For my test, I don't want the darkening effect to occur after the startup ends. So I want to put my change after the startup ends, which I put after 3 seconds of ending. So I'm gonna put wait statements for each marker right now, since I have to. Now time to test. And it works perfectly as I want it. And you can do whatever you want as adjustments. Forgot to put it here after completing the next section, so I'll just do it now. I need to set the camera's field of view back to normal, and the default's like 70, so I just set it back to that. Now I'm going to explain what post-rendering effects are before we use them. So there's 5. Bloom, which makes things brighter that are already bright and causes eye damage. Blur, which causes the blur, which also causes eye damage. Color correction, which does a whole bunch of things. Depth of field, which puts things in focus. As you can see, things are up close, it's not focused. This one is really customizable. And sun rays, which adds brightness to the sun. And we're only going to be using depth of field and Bloom for this tutorial. And the best way you can learn what they do is just mess around with the settings on different objects. For Bloom, it only works on glowing objects like neon stuff. So how I utilize this is, once I get these parts, I hide them inside my script. When you parent these to a script, they don't function. And then when I need to use them, I put them in the camera and they'll be enabled. And I already did the properties for both the bloom and depth of field. So here's the bloom properties right here. And here's the depth of field properties right here. If you want to customize it on your own and you don't know what these do, just toy with the properties and see what happens. These things are really versatile and really good. Almost every game I play uses them. I'm pretty sure anyway. And once I move them in here, I use Tween service to change the settings to make them fade away, which I will be doing with Bloom. Depth of field will stay the same, however. Now let's get the scripting. So first, before we script, we always gotta put my complete visuals under the local script I'll be using. Declare the variables, and then we gotta do the wait statement just so I don't forget to do it later. Time to test in case I did something wrong. And looks good. The animation's decent, but you can just fix that later by messing with the wait statement. It's time for the most complicated effect, the mirror effect. And how I did it was I made a bunch of glass parts and put it in front of my camera. So I make a default glass wall like this one and call it the canvas. I changed the canvas to this part. This part would be like a camera, or the position my camera would be in, and I would have to put it directly in front of my camera using the local script so only I can see it. So I put it here, and then I moved this one like 2 studs out or 3 studs out, and then I changed the size to the canvas size that I want, which I've done it already. And the canvas size is about 1/511 if the thing is 3 studs away from the camera. And the method is I duplicate this and make it like, since it's 3 studs away, I make it into a 3x3 cube, put it down, and I'll make a line of these cubes starting at like, let's say the right vector of this by like 3, offset by the right vector of this by like 3, and just increment 0.5 over this increment and rotate it a random amount by the y-axis. Or these cubes, so a bunch of duplicated cubes. Like so. So if I have a bunch of these mixed together, it would create a pretty decent glass shatter effect. And if I randomize the height, I can get some vertical or horizontal line action in there too. So now let's put that in the script. This will be probably the longest time lapse. And for the final touch, I have to make all the glass walls shatter after a little bit. Now we're on the home stretch, we just have to make a script that will make our victims will suffer the effects when they get hit by the attack. And we're going to be using the big spear as our hitbox. And you should watch my... Now that I've completed our scan player function, I'm just gonna put in all the effects that I want to occur, which is exploding the player's limbs so they fly everywhere, and giving the player the GCE effect when they get hit. And before I do that, I'm gonna actually add an extra argument onto this event called bool. And what this will do is, if bool is true, it will lock the player's camera in place, and I want these for the victims. Here's a cool little trick to test multiple players. When you go to this test menu, you can select in these two tabs how many players you want to test, and when you start this, it creates your own server. Mind you, you actually need a decently strong computer in order to run this. Alright, as you can see there, I might have to make a completely new function in case the victim has probably lots of but it can't move all those. And we have our complete judgment cut. I don't know why the ragdoll's working all of a sudden, but yeah, you know, I hope you enjoyed my video. This video was pretty annoying to make. Trust me, it did not take me 2 weeks to make this. I was just lazy, sorry. Alright, hope this was helpful. If you want to add your sound effects, polish it up, you can do that later. This is level 4, guys. I'm not teaching that stuff. And the bonus video will probably be impact frames, because if you didn't notice, there were actually impact frames in the showcased version. Alright, bye bye.